intensely selfish first. Make sure you are feeling physically strong. And then let's look at ways in which you can feel mentally and emotionally strong as well. And this is when we talk about nurturing the positive energy around you. So the first tip that I would want to communicate around that would be hanging out with what I call balcony people. So balcony people are, and I know this sounds very twee, but balcony people are the people who take you up to the balcony and they show you the view. They remind you of the best version of you. You spend time with them and you feel good about yourself. You might have great banter with them, you might have a good laugh with them, but you can see that they can see you. They really believe in you. And I think you all know who the balcony people are in your lives. And I would really recommend that you spend good, solid time with the balcony people in your life, as opposed to the basement people in your life. So the basement people in your life are the people who take you down to the basement, where it's dark and it's dank, and they make you feel like the worst version of you. And they often are what I call cave dwellers, constantly against virtually everything. So basement people, we all have a few basement people in our lives as well. And I think we need to be aware of those basement people in our lives, and we need to find ways in which we can manage those relationships. But we need to counteract that basement energy with the balcony energy. So spend as much time as you can with the balcony people in your life, the people who believe in you, the people who, and you've all got them. You know, I've got a girlfriend who I speak to 2-3 times a week, because we always have a good laugh, and I don't know what it is, we just spark. And I've got lots of great friends, but she's the one who really makes me feel I'm okay and it's okay. And those are the people that you need to spend time with. So that's one way to nurture positive energy around you. And just know that if somebody's giving you balcony energy, there's every chance you'll be giving balcony energy back. Another way to make sure that you are feeling positive is to look at the beginning and the end of your day. So I'm going to start with the end of the day. At the end of your day, as you are drifting off to sleep, it's very easy to think about all the things that you haven't done in your day. Think about all the things that you should have done that day. Think about all the things that didn't go particularly well. And you get into this slightly anxious spiral, and you're kind of thinking, oh, I should have done that. I didn't do that. Or that didn't go really well. I'm really disappointed with that. And the problem with that is that if you go to sleep with those thoughts in your head, there is a very good chance, because of the way our brains work, there is a very good chance that you'll wake up the next morning feeling a little bit blah. So I really would recommend, when it comes to things like sleep hygiene, a very powerful tool for sleep hygiene is to actually, when you go to sleep, think about the good stuff. Think about the stuff you have done. Think about how the interactions you've had, the person who smiled at you in the store, or the person who sent you a funny email. Think about the positive things in your life as opposed to the negative stuff. And then the next morning when you wake up, because you've had some fairly positive thoughts just before you go to sleep, you need to decide what your day is going to be like. So I've got a little magnet, I've got a little sort of fridge magnets stuck on I've got a metal lamp, stuck on a metal lamp right next to my bed. So when I wake up, I can see it, and it says, today is going to be a good day. And that's a great reminder. I wake up and I think, today is going to be a good day. And what might happen is you wake up and think, yes, today is going to be a good day. And then something happens, like, I don't know, your water isn't working, your coffee machine's broken, your children or your partner or your parents are a bit cranky with you. And then it's very easy to then decide, actually, today's going to be awful. That's it. Today's over. It's going to be rubbish from now on. And that's a very easy thing to do. We can do what's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we decide, or something bad happens to us, and we decide today's going to be a bad day, then of course it'll be a bad day. So I do what I start the day again. So I had a cranky conversation with my husband today because I couldn't even remember what we were arguing about, but we were definitely having a cranky moment in the day. So I removed myself and I did 3 of my long, slow and steady breaths. I decided I was okay and it's okay. And then I decided I was going to start the day again. And I really recommend you do something like that because it's too easy for us to have a day that doesn't start well and then decide the whole day is going to be bad. Have a week that starts well and then the whole week's going to be bad. Have a month, have a year, because 2020 is really calling us all forth. And it's very easy for us to write the year off because there have been so many challenges, and we've got new challenges that have just appeared now in the States, real desperate challenges. And we need to not decide this is going to be an awful year. Because if this is going to be an awful year, well, then it will be an awful year. So we have it in our power to decide what the day is going to be like, what the year is going to be like, what the month's going to be like, etc. So I really recommend that you don't start each day thinking it's going to be blah, because that's going to really destroy your confidence. And there's just one other little thing that I wanted to say on the basis of sort of positive psychology. There are 2 very powerful things in positive psychology that we should never forget. One is having a strong sense of community. And then the other link to that is committing to random acts of kindness. So having a strong sense of community, if you have a strong sense of community, you are likely to live longer. You're likely to live a much happier life. So I really recommend that you work hard at your balcony relationships. You work hard at the relationships in your life, that you keep your tribe nice and strong. And by tribe, I mean the people who you really relate to, but then you also keep your network big and strong. And your network is people, colleagues, people you work with, people who are in the same industry as you, people who interest you in life. Network, reach out to them. And I know a small world, you're very good at doing that, and keep that going, because the bigger and more diverse your network is, the stronger your sense of community is going to be. And then keep your tribe, which is full of balcony people, nice and strong too. So that's the one thing. And then alongside that is commit to random acts of kindness. Random acts of kindness are a fantastic win-win, and they're wonderful for your confidence. Why? Because doing something kind makes you feel good, and it has a wonderfully positive impact on the person that you've been kind to. So it's a real win-win. You win and they win. And when you do something kind to somebody, they genuinely engage with you or thank you in a very heartfelt and warm way, and that will make you feel good. Or even if you just smile at somebody and they smile back, that gives you that little lift. And these are really important if you want to feel good about yourself. And if you feel good about yourself, you're going to feel confident. So keep your community strong and commit to random acts of kindness. Now, just talking about pure confidence, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I call the acting as if technique. I don't know if any of you have heard of the 3-second rule, the 5-second rule, or the 10-second rule, whatever it is. But what happens that because of our perception, because we can't take all the information in that's coming at us all the time in a minute detail, we make very quick decisions when we perceive a situation. And when we perceive somebody, when we look at somebody, we make a very quick decision about them. So when you all came onto this seminar, you will have scanned me and you will have decided whether you think that I'm somebody that's worth listening to. And you will have decided very quickly whether I'm somebody who you want to engage with. And you will have done that probably in the first 3 to 10 seconds. So hopefully I started in a strong and positive way, and you thought, well, she's smiley, she's interesting, maybe we can, and maybe she'll be worth listening to. But if you looked at me and thought, not sure about her, the challenge is it'll take up to 40 minutes for me to persuade you that I'm somebody worth listening to. So if the next 40 minutes are going to have to go incredibly well for you to feel that I'm somebody worth engaging with. Well, if in those first 3 to 10 seconds you decided that actually I was worth relating to, then I've got you on my side already. I've got the advantage. So if you want to come across as confident, you need to act as if you're confident, particularly in those first 3 to 10 seconds. So what does that mean? If you walk into a room, you have to smile. You have to engage with your eyes. You have to have a strong posture. You have to have your arm outstretched to shake or whatever it is that you do in greeting. You've got to engage in a strong and positive way. Because the extraordinary thing is that if you do that, not only will you have people on your side and you won't be trying to recover, but also people will treat you as if you're confident. And if people treat you as if you're confident, you will start to feel confident. So the acting as if you're confident is incredibly powerful. And don't get me wrong, we all have moments when we don't feel confident. I mean, absolutely everybody has moments when they don't feel confident, and moments when they feel a little bit wobbly, and moments when it doesn't feel 100%. But if you are acting as if you're confident, that's going to be incredibly empowering. And also, as I say, if you engage in a positive way with people, people engage positively back with you, then suddenly confidence feels a little bit more natural. So keep practicing that, keep engaging in as positive a way as possible. And I'm just keeping an eye on the time because I must have run out, so I'll talk about communication too, don't I? Right, I'm just going to give you some final points about confidence. Also easy, these are easy tips and tools. You don't need to engage with all of them, but just engage with as many as you can. I guess if you want to be confident, just be mindful of not taking everything too seriously. Because one of the traps we can fall into in this very fast moving, slightly aggressive, stressy environment that so many of us live in, it's very easy to actually take everything just a little bit too seriously. So what we do is everything feels a little bit like a life and death decision. So we have a deadline we have to hit, and if we don't hit it, the sky's going to fall on our head. We have a document that has to be produced and it's not quite right, and we feel like we failed completely. Our whole life is a failure because we didn't get that document quite right. And what happens is we just really start to feel back-footed all the time because everything is so important. So there's a little trick that I do sometimes. I say to myself, in 2 days' time, how important is this going to be? In 2 weeks' time, how important is this going to be? In 2 months' time, how important is it going to be? And in 2 years, how important is it going to be? And you'll find that there aren't that many decisions that are still going to be important in 2 years' time. There might be some that are important in 2 weeks' time, possibly even 2 months, but 2 years. So are they really life and death decisions? Or are they really life and death situations? You know, we're not all neurosurgeons. We're not all dealing with life and death all the time. And we mustn't act as if we are, because that is a real way to get really stressed and a real way to destroy our confidence and a real way to feel that we're not quite good enough. So just be careful on not taking everything too seriously. And then I guess my final point when it comes to confidence is just make sure that you are noticing the moments of joy in your day, or the moments when things feel okay, or the moments when there's been just a little bit of sunshine. Because if you build on those moments, you'll feel good about yourself, as opposed to sitting in what I call the shoulds. I should do better. I'm not quite good enough. I should be there. I should get this done on time. I shouldn't have got that wrong. There are just so many things that it's very easy for us to fall into the should place. I should be better. I should be more confident. I should be able to manage this better. All of those are very negative thought patterns. And linked to that, I just want to talk very quickly about perfectionism and imposter syndrome. So perfectionism is, we all know what perfectionism is when we have this desperate desire to do everything perfectly. And of course, it's a contradiction in terms. Nothing is ever perfect. And if we put ourselves under enormous pressure to be perfect all the time, we are going to completely destroy our confidence. So just be very mindful of perfectionism, because perfectionism is going to hijack your confidence. And perfectionism needs to be managed by noticing the good stuff, noticing the joy, noticing the stuff you have done, not the stuff you haven't done, being careful of not making everything a life and death decision. Because perfectionism is a fundamental way to undermine your confidence. And linked to that is what I would call imposter syndrome. I don't know if you all have heard of imposter syndrome, but imposter syndrome is all about how people don't believe they're good enough to be in the role they're in. So it's like me, sitting here and delivering a virtual seminar, and me saying to myself, well, actually, I'm not really qualified to do this. Actually, I'm not really good enough to run a seminar. Actually, I'm not expert enough to be engaging with all these fabulous people. They're all going to know more than me. And there's every chance that you are all fabulous. And there's every chance that some of you will know more than me. But this is what I do. And it's really important that I believe in what I have to say. And actually, I'm not an imposter. I've been doing this for, nearly 20 years. I'm pretty well qualified. I've got lots of experience, blah, blah, blah. So actually, I'm okay. And it's okay. But if I had imposter syndrome, I would feel all the time that I wasn't quite good enough. And I'd be striving to do more and more and more. And whilst it's really important that we keep striving and we keep trying to do more, if we do it at cost to ourselves, if we push ourselves so hard that we actually, we never feel like we're good enough, and we kill ourselves in the process. We really exhaust ourselves. We're never going to feel confident, and we're never going to feel powerful. So there's something, if you are somebody who has a slight tendency to imposter syndrome or perfectionism, there's a very powerful little phrase that you should need to engage in, and it's all about being good enough. Being a good enough parent, being good enough at your job. It's all because there's lots of things in life where actually being good enough is enough. In fact, everything in life, it's about just being good enough. It's not about being perfect. And there will always be somebody who's bigger, better, bolder, braver, more qualified, the higher earner than you. But try and make sure whatever you've got is enough. Because if you can find the joy and if you can feel like you're enough, then confidence will be a natural next step for you. So that's my little spiel on confidence. And I'm going to leap straight into communication, and then I'm going to look at the Q&A if that's okay, because I've only got 15 minutes left of me blabbing at you, so we don't want to run out of time. And of course, communication is linked very, very closely with confidence, because if you're an effective communicator, you will come across as confident and you will feel better about yourself. If you're seen as a good communicator, it's really going to help you. So here are a few tips and tools on the best way to communicate. What does everybody think the first rule of effective communication is? Does anybody want to reply to that? What do you think the first rule of effective communication is? Smile, love that. Eye contact, love that. Yes, somebody has said it. It's a clear message, be clear, be concise. Somebody else has said it. It's listening. Voice is great. All of those are lots of powerful things there, but it's listening, listening, listen. Yes. The first rule of effective communication is to be a good listener. Why is listening so important? Well, there are a couple of reasons why listening is so important. The first is that actually if you listen first and talk second, you are much more likely to be in control of the conversation. Most people think is the more they talk, the more control they're going to have in a conversation. But that's actually not the case. If you ask a very good, what I call open-ended question, and I think, do you all know what an open-ended question is? An open-ended question is a question where it's not a yes or no answer. It's not a one answer, like, what's your name? Anna. How old are you? 54. Where were you born? South Africa, or whatever it is. Those are just closed-end questions. If somebody said to me, you know, what are your views on listening? I could then talk for the next 3 or 4 minutes about listening, and I could give you why I think listening is important, blah blah blah. So I can really expand the answer. And if the person that you're talking to is expansive with their answer, why is that helpful to you? It's helpful to you for a number of reasons. First of all, if you're feeling a bit nervous, it gives you a chance just to sort of calm down, to breathe, to engage. Secondly, you get a sense of the individual. You get a sense of their style of communication. You get a sense of what engages and interests them. You get a sense of, you can see their body language. You can get a real sense of somebody. And if you get a sense of somebody, your opportunity to engage effectively is going to be much stronger. So listen first, and just be aware when it comes to listen, because somebody wrote list empathy there, lovely. Listening, by listening, I mean deep listening. I mean really engaging with the person. So there are a couple of traps you can fall into when it comes to listening. The first one is what I call the go, go, go intervention. In other words, you're listening, but you're just waiting for them to pause so that you can leap in and say something. So you're not actually listening, you're listening for when you can say what you want to say. So just be slightly mindful of that, because if we want to interrupt all the time, we're not going to be really listening to the person. We're not going to be looking at that person. We're not going to be reading their body language. We're not going to really engage with that person and help that person feel heard. That's the one trap you can fall into. The other trap is to go, People who are doing that are usually multitasking. So they might just be thinking about something else or listening to something else, or they might actually be typing on their phones, painting their fingernails, ironing, I don't know, but doing something else and not actually really engaging with the person that they want to listen to. So just be mindful. If you start to go, your mind might be drifting somewhere else, or you might be doing something else. And multitasking is never a powerful way to listen. The last listening trap is what I call initiate defense shields. So initiate defense shields is somebody says something and you immediately go into the defensive. You immediately feel that somebody's attacking you. And if you're going to go into the defensive, you're never going to have a good, open, honest conversation. So just be mindful of those 3 traps you can fall into when you listen. And when you listen, so when you meet somebody, ask them a good, engaging, open-ended question. The other thing to do when you are listening or when you are communicating is get people on your side first before you hit them with anything. So the first thing to do is listen to them, and then find ways in which you can say something positive or encouraging of them, something that really engages them and makes you look like you've listened to them, but also actually you feel very positively towards them. Because if you want somebody, if you're in a selling situation, or you need somebody to help you with something, or you want your boss to really talk to you in a sort of sensible way, make sure that you do what I call pre-sway the conversation. You get that person on your side first before you start having any kind of awkward conversation. So listen, say positive things, be positive, engage, be empathetic. So do I have an example? So for instance, I mean, it can be anything from, so somebody says, talk to me about listening. And I talk to them about listening and they say, gosh, you really understand listening, don't you? I really think it's intriguing. You are really an interesting person when it comes to listening. And can I just say, it's got to be genuine. You can't just go, it's a bit like, me saying to somebody, gosh, you look great today. You just look so full of energy. I've got to mean it. If I'm just going, oh, you look great today, or, if I say that, I might get her on my side. You've got to mean it. So you've got to look for something in that person or something that person is saying that you genuinely want to respond positively to, because it's got to be genuine. So really engage with whatever somebody's saying to you. Or you walk into a room and you say something positive to them. So you walk into your boss's office and you say to them, thank you for giving me this time. I really appreciate the fact that you always give me time, and I've got a couple of challenges and I just knew that you were the right person to bring them to. Again, only if you mean it, say it. So it's getting people on your side. So I think that's all I've got to say about sort of listening and getting people on your side when it comes to communication. What else can you do that makes sure that your communication is powerful? Never underestimate the power of prep and practice. So I do seminars all the time. I do training all the time. And this is all brand new to me, the virtual seminars, but I have been doing it for the last sort of, 12 weeks. But before any seminar, first of all, I look at my notes and I tweak them. So I make sure that it's bespoke for whoever I'm going to be talking to. But then I actually practice. I run through it in my head or even out loud if I feel I need to. Because if you want to come across as confident, as a good communicator, you need to practice. There are very few people who can just sort of do it, Yes, there are people who are slightly more effective communicators, but if you are in a situation where you are going to have to stand up and talk about something serious, or you're going into a serious meeting, or you're going to try and find ways in which you can prep and practice for it. Because it's really, really helpful. And it's really good for your confidence. And can I just say, if you're going into a meeting where you're going to have to do a presentation or whatever, or you're a little bit nervous about it, make sure you do some breathing before you go in. Make sure you get a bit of balcony energy before you go in, because all of that is going to help you to feel strong and positive and confident when you go in. And can I also say that if you are in a situation where you can't always prep and practice, so, you might be called out, you might be asked a question that you don't know the answer to, always be honest. So don't try and fluff your way through a question. If you don't know the answer, make sure that you communicate that. Say, look, I'm not quite sure of the answer to that, or I don't have those facts and figures with me. But always say, I will get back to you. I'm sure you all know this, but it's really important that we are honest, because there is nothing worse than being caught out. And talk about destroying your belief in your communication skills and destroying your confidence. It's being caught out, and somebody going for the jugular like a Rottweiler, saying that's wrong, or that's not correct, or you don't know what you're talking about, or whatever. Or you're talking and you suddenly think, I am completely stuck. If you're completely stuck, stop and say that. Say, look, I think I'm going off target here. I'm not answering your question. I need to go and check my facts and figures, and I will get back to you. So try and be as honest as you can. People will respect that so much more than an answer that is fluffed and doesn't really work very well. The other thing to do when it comes to communication is we all need to avoid the me trap. So the Mimimi Trap is talking about Percy-Davis.com. It's talking about me. So everything is from the perspective of me. So somebody says something and I turn it immediately into something about me. Somebody says something about you and you just engage in that, and you just talk about that all the time. Because if you're talking from the perspective of me, it's not usually that engaging. People are much more interested in themselves, or they're much more interested in your value add to the organization you're working for. So if you go in to see your boss and you want to talk about getting a raise, if you go in and say, well, look, I think I deserve a raise. I think I've worked so hard. I think that there are lots of other people at my level, who are not as good as me. I think that I've, produced that project very well. That's not necessarily going to endear yourself to your boss. If you say, I would like to have a raise because, yes, I've achieved all these things, but I've achieved all these things, but I've achieved them in order to add value to the organization. So in other words, you are saying, I can add value to this organization. This is the value I've already added, and this is where I can continue to add value. So you always talk from the perspective of adding value to the organization you're working for. So I would like to get promoted because I feel that in this new promoted position, I can add even more value. I would like to get a raise because I have added this value to the organization, and I feel that I'm now ready for the next step, and if I get this raise and I get a promotion with the raise, or I get a raise, I will be motivated to add even more value to the organization. So always talk about the organization. Don't talk about you if you can possibly help it, because what in an organization, people are looking at your value add to the bottom line, how you can make the organization more profitable or more viable or more discerning or more valuable or whatever it is. That's why you're employed. You're not employed in order to give you a job and to get you paid. You're employed in order to help the organization. And so I always try and speak from that perspective. So avoid the Mimimi Trap. So in your social interaction, avoid the Mimimi Trap, because nobody wants to hear just about you. It's got to be an interaction. But then also, when you're talking in an organization, never talk from me. And then my final point on communication, you're racing through this, but we've only got 45 minutes, so I didn't want to take up too much of your evening, everybody. It's all about knowing your communication style and that of others. So there are a couple of things. Are you an introvert? And are you talking to an extrovert? Or is the person who you're talking to an extrovert and you're an introvert? Because it's very important that we know, and I think we all know the difference between introverts and extroverts. So introverts tend to be, tend to be softer spoken. They tend to be slightly more cerebral. They tend to be people who don't, aren't all hands are waving, lots of attention. They're quite low key. They can be slightly shy. Lots of power in being an introvert. And then extroverts are people who are big personalities, talk slightly more loudly, seem to have a lot of confidence, etc. Though that's a myth. Introverts and extroverts can both be confident, but it's a different style of communication, isn't it? And just try and work out know who you are, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. And then if you're talking to an extrovert, you need to raise your volume a bit, be a little bit more confident in your communication style. If you're talking to an introvert, don't blare at them, soften your language, give them space, ask them open-ended questions, then pause, give them time to answer. Because introverts don't necessarily come in guns ablaze, so give them the opportunity to be themselves. So try and match your tone on the extrovert-introvert spectrum. And then also there's one thing we haven't talked about and we can't talk about in great depth here, but that's all about conflict management. So in psychology, we talk about two kinds of conflict. We talk about conflict seekers and conflict avoiders. So conflict avoiders are people who don't like conflict. They avoid conflict at all costs. So they will just absorb somebody's aggression. They won't necessarily push back. I'm a bit of a conflict avoider, and my husband's actually a conflict seeker. So conflict seekers are people who actually like to have it out, like a good shouting match, like to be strong about something, like to put their opinion forward, and like their way. And I'm not saying either is bad, because conflict seekers actually say it how it is and they get it out there and they clear the air. Conflict avoiders can sort of bottle things up and get quite stressed. But then a conflict avoiders also, they keep the peace. They don't ruffle too many feathers. They're very empathetic towards people often. They're very sensitive to how other people are feeling. So both of them have their style. So just also be aware of that. So if you're a bit of a conflict seeker, so if you like to bam, 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 just be mindful if the other person's a conflict avoider. Because sometimes if you're just talking assertively at them, they might hear aggression. And so it's just make sure that you tone yourself down if you're talking to a conflict avoider. Well, if you're talking to a conflict seeker, sometimes you have to stand up to them and be brave. So I've had to learn to say to my husband, enough. That's it. I'm not having, that's sounding aggressive to me. It's not sounding assertive. So there's something about really understanding where you sit in that spectrum so that you can modulate your communication slightly. And just be mindful that different cultures have different ways of communicating. So, some cultures are, people who are very strong, assertive, direct communicators, which can feel like quite conflict seeking. While some cultures, you know, it's, you don't shout, you don't pound the table, you don't get overly assertive, you know, you're on the side of being overly polite. And so when you have those two people, you know, two groups in the room, it's just modulating your communication accordingly and being mindful of the culture that you're communicating with. It's really important, just, you know, when you're going in to meet people for the first time, etc., or if you're working with a group of people who are a slightly different culture to you, it's really important that we remember these things. So we are just past 45 minutes. So I've been racing through that. I'm sorry about that, everybody, but there was just quite a lot of information that I desperately wanted to share with you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the chat, and I'm going to see if I can get, yep, I'm going to go to Q&A. Okay. And I'm just going to read them out, and then we'll give them an answer. What would be the best way to request a raise in salary or hourly rate, independent contractors, especially in this coronavirus time where some people would make your same task for even half the pay? That is a very tough question. I think it's about, if you're going to have those kind of questions, you need to go in confidently. So make sure that those, you know, first few seconds really count, even if it's on an email, that you're very confident. You pre-sway the conversation, so you probably tell them how much you enjoy working for them or how much you value working for them or whatever. And then I would have a very factual conversation. So I would say factually why you should be, you know, it mustn't be an emotive conversation. I need the money, or, you know, I'm a nice person, or it needs to be factual. I need this pay because I always go the extra mile, and these are examples of how I go the extra mile. So, so that is, I hope you're all getting this. I'm not sure, but I think you are. That would be my answer. So pre-sway the conversation, get people on your side before you start communicating, and then keep the conversation as unemotive as possible and as factual as possible. Next question. I feel that unfortunately most of my colleagues are not too trustworthy, genuine and integrate. They tend to be competitive and opportunistic. Unfortunately, how can we handle this situation? Well, that's a really tough one. If you're really feeling uncomfortable in your working environment, I would strongly suggest you probably leave, because it's very important that we surround ourselves with enough people that we feel we can like and trust. So I would probably recommend you leave that organization. And if that isn't possible, then I think you need to find a few people in the organization that you feel are genuine and trustworthy, and that you can form an alliance with. But, you know, at the end of the day, we work, you know, for a large portion of every day. So you really want to be trying to find an organization where there is a sense of trust. So that would be my answer to that one. What is your suggestion if you are the newbie in the office and a foreigner at that, and you do not speak the language of the country but you are trying? That is really tough. It's tough when it's not your same language, because if you spoke the same language as everybody, I would really work hard at networking and engaging. I think in the situation where you don't really speak the language, I think it's about finding a few allies, a few people who can support you, a few people who can help introduce you to people. And then also, I'd be very honest. I would say, I would apologize. I would front with the conversation by saying, look, you know, I'm struggling with the language. I'm trying as hard as I can, but please forgive me if I'm a bit slow or I'm not engaging as quickly as I'd like to. Lots of smiles, lots of efforts to meet people. And yes, just go around, you know, shake people's hands and engage with them, but apologize, say, look, I don't really understand, but I'm trying, and saying, but can I? And then the other thing I think is see what you can do to help other people in the organization. But that's very challenging if you don't speak the language. So look and see if you can find some allies. How does confidence, perfectionism, trust, and maintaining a high standard come together? How do you balance all of these? Yeah, that's a really good question. Confidence, perfectionism, trust, and maintaining a high standard come together. Yes, I think we often can confuse perfectionism and maintaining a high standard. We can get them sort of merged, that somehow maintaining a high standard means we've got to be perfect. I think there's certain things that have to be 100% correct. So if you're filling in a document, it's got to be correct. So it's about working out what has to be 100% correct and what is okay. Because the problem with perfectionists, it's not just 100% correct stuff that has to be perfect, it's everything. And so they start sort of stressing everybody and getting really really negative with everybody. So you need to be fairly strategic, because getting those documents that need to be 100% correct is good for your confidence, but actually working out the things that actually is not as important is, and therefore you can be a bit relaxed with, is really important if you want to feel confident. Because otherwise, if everything has to be perfect, you then communicate that to everybody else, and suddenly everybody else is feeling very stressed, and then your trust goes, because people no longer trust you because you are pushing everybody too hard. I hope that helps. So yeah, it's all about balance. It's all about balancing what has to be 100% correct and what just has to be good enough. Maximizing one's strengths versus fixing one's weaknesses for building confidence. That's a lovely one. I think it's actually about being honest. So I think, yes, the problem with if you're pushing to maximize your strengths all the time, I think you can get into quite a sort of competitive place. While if you are very honest about your strengths and your weaknesses, I think that's very endearing to lots of people. I think that's very, I think people will see the whole of you, and I think it allows you to kind of drop your shoulders and actually feel okay. Because I think if you're maximizing your strengths all the time, I think it pushes you again to that perfectionist place. So I would go for honesty. I would go for trust. I would go for empathy. If you want to be building confidence for yourself, as opposed to worrying about your weaknesses, pushing your strengths, because that becomes a very competitive and slightly confidence sapping exercise if you're not careful. What is your opinion on applying reverse psychology in order to persuade? Right. That's an excellent question. I think you've got to be very careful of reverse psychology, because it can be quite manipulative. So I would always go for honesty and openness as opposed to using reverse psychology. Yeah, I think would be my response to that. And here's and she said, for example, when a company is being in a system change, what is the most important thing to take all members of the team with on this journey? Again, I think it's about honesty and openness. It's about helping people feel part of something. Because one of the strongest ways in which an organization can thrive is if everybody feels part of something. There's a strong sense of community in the organization. So I would say that if the system is changing, they need to really understand why, and they need to really engage with the system change in as positive a way as possible. And if they're not feeling comfortable, you need to be creating a culture where people can say that and actually process their distress or their anxiety or their lack of confidence. So I would keep encouraging as much openness as you can and as much engagement in an honest way as possible. Working with people remotely and having the habit to thank them each time actually strengthened my business relationship with people I train. So I'm communicating gratitude towards others is really okay. So that person is just talking about gratitude. Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. Gratitude is incredibly powerful, and one of the best ways to help people be seen is to say thank you, as long as it's in a genuine way. You know, everything we do has to be genuine. Because if we don't, if we just say, you know, it's like telling children all the time, oh, I think you're fabulous, oh, you're wonderful, you're fantastic, you're great, it starts to become less genuine. You need to, and so when you say thank you for something, or when you notice something, you need to be very specific. So I think that piece of work you did was incredibly good, and that first paragraph was particularly powerful. Or, you know, I think that piece of work that you did was great. I mean, all those numbers, you know, and there were a lot of numbers there, all make real sense to me. You've really, you know, highlighted to me the challenges we've got, or whatever it is. So be very specific. Just say, don't say, oh, thanks, great job. Be specific, because that helps people feel heard and seen, and that helps other people feel confident, and it will help you feel confident because you are communicating in a genuine, authentic way. I'm just going to use one. I'm going to just do this last question. Thank you. It's been a great webinar. Thank you. Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. What can we do if the other party is using argumentative, they're being argumentative when they communicate? Do we name it like, sorry, this, okay. So this person is saying, what if somebody's being very argumentative? I think it is actually important that you try and name it. Sometimes if it's a very heated discussion, I think it's very difficult at that time to say, you being argumentative, you being aggressive. I think the best thing to do is to walk away from that situation if you possibly can. And then later on, go back to them and say, look, I found that communication incredibly difficult. Don't say it when they're feeling argumentative, because they're very likely to get defensive. They can get, and they can get even more aggressive, you know, and heated, and the conversation can go really pear-shaped. So what you want to do is you want to find them when they're in a stronger, you know, when they are calmer. You persuade the conversation. So you tell them, you know, how much you appreciate them or whatever. And then you say, but look, I found that this communication we just had, or we had yesterday, very difficult. I was hearing you being very aggressive, you know, and were you being aggressive, you know? So it's, you know, what did you, and if they say, well, they're being assertive, say, well, look, I heard aggression. How can we manage that more effectively? So you need to call it out. You really do need to call it out, because otherwise you'll get into a situation where you're starting to feel bullied, and that's never a nice place to be, or you having to be very aggressive back, and that can really undermine your confidence as well. So communication with a conflict seeker, avoider, and introvert, extrovert, for everybody probably is easier one-sided communication. How can we improve to be able to properly apply different styles? Yes, well, I think it's, I think that example of the conflict avoider versus conflict seeker, I think it's again, it's about opening up the conversation. It's about telling people that you find their style of communication difficult, if it gets into a heated situation, or if somebody is being very assertive, it's finding ways in which you can be more assertive. But I do think that if you're finding somebody's communication style, or if they're particularly extrovert and you're finding it actually quite alarming, you do need to find a way in which you tell somebody that you're finding that communication style difficult. So yes, you know, up your assertiveness if you're talking to a conflict seeker, up your extroversion if you're talking to an introvert, or downplay it. Or if somebody is a conflict avoider, downplay your assertive style of communication. But if it's starting to make you feel uncomfortable, you need to call it out. I hope that helps. A little bit muddled there, I fear. But if you get really stuck, I think the best thing for you to do is touch base with me, because I know that my details are going to be shared with you all. So touch base with me on Instagram or whatever, and I'll try and communicate back with you, because I can see that we've hit the magic hour mark, and I think a lot of you will need to be leaving this conversation now. But I hope that was helpful, and thank you for all listening and for engaging in such an engaging way, and all those excellent questions. It was really, really super to talk to you all. And I just wish I could have seen all your faces. I'm really sorry that I've missed all your faces. But I think we are now done. So I'm going to leave this call, because I think that's what I have to do. Yes, goodbye and good luck, and keep in touch. You know, keep in touch on my Instagram, my LinkedIn, my check out my website, whatever it is you want to do. But yes, and good luck to everybody. It's been a real delight. Thank you. I'm going to leave now. Bye.